Good evening, everyone. I'm staying over here. I like my face. Good evening. My name is Eric Lucius. I'm the manager of the Highland Library here. It's good to see some familiar faces, and for you that haven't been here before, welcome. We're very, very happy to have this presentation. Obviously, a very popular subject in the community. We literally do not have any other chairs in this building, so this is it. So thank you all for coming. Just a real quick thing, couple of housekeeping things. If you need to use the restroom, it's right out the main exit. Right, take a left down the hallway. It's right there. The restrooms will be on your left. Because I have a captive audience, I can't resist plugging a couple of our future upcoming programs. So just something's coming up here on Wednesday, October 25th. We're having Exploring the Beatles Revolver, one of our music series programs. On Thursday, the next day, October 26th, we're having a program on the mysteries of Squire's Castle, kind of a Metro Park program. All of these programs, these two programs, everything else we have, you can find in our Library Live newsletter. It says all of our programs through the fall, and all of this information. When you leave, if you look to your left, there's a little table there, has all this wonderful information. So we hope to see you in all of our programs. So without further ado, Sean, Foster, Eric. There's a couple others I didn't know and I haven't met, but anyway, I'm sorry for skipping anyone else. I'm going to turn it over to you all for this wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks for having us. We really appreciate you hosting us. So good evening. My name is Sean McDermott. I'm the Chief Planning and Design Officer at the Cleveland Metro Parks. Presenting tonight with several Metro Parks employees, but we have those presenting and some other Metro Parks employees who aren't presenting tonight. So I want our Metro Parks team to stand up, and if we could introduce ourselves to the crowd. So Seth.
Hi, Seth Keller, Project Manager, Planning and Design.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Schaefer. I'm the Natural Resource Manager for all our southern.
I'm Foster Brown. I'm a naturalist at Brexville Nature Center.
I'm Ken Stray. I'm the park manager of Hinckley Reservation.
I'm Elizabeth Bingo, and I'm the related to our house.
And a lot of our staff is here on their own time tonight. It shows you just how dedicated they are to their jobs, to Hinckley, and to being here. So we have a lot of content to get through. We do appreciate some of the questions that you have already sent in to us. So we're going to address those. But before we even start, we haven't found a car. We haven't found any unique things. Yeah, it is like a little bit kind of disappointing. I thought we'd find more treasures, but so far things have been pretty good. So I kind of we're going to step back first, and we'll give a little bit about the Metro Parks. Foster's going to give some background on history. Eric's going to give us some background on natural resources. I'll talk a lot about the engineering and the planning, and hopefully by then we've answered most of your questions. And if we haven't, then pop the hands up, and we are happy to be here as long as we need to be to answer your questions. So let's start. A little background with where we are. If I can get the clicker to work, that'd be great. Bear with me, guys. Okay, so like I said, I'm Sean, we've got Eric and Foster, so we're going to walk through history, a little bit of the background of the dam, the inspections that we do on the dam, the rehabilitation that we're undergoing now, the lake draining process, which I know has a lot of interest, our construction sequence, and then, like I said, our questions and answers. So we're here at the bottom of the map in Hinckley and Hinckley Reservation. We always want to take the time to talk about the totality of the Cleveland Metro Park system. Although Hinckley was one of the original 9 reservations, we've grown. In fact, by the end of this year, we will probably exceed the threshold of 25,000 acres. So we are the oldest park district in the state of Ohio. We're 106 years old from this past July. And we're the second largest park district in Ohio, only behind Franklin County, but they bought a bunch of farms and they don't connect them. And we have
see all of you are interested in what's going on here. And, you know, as I go through some of these historic pictures, I want to acknowledge one person here that's been very helpful through the years, and that's Susan Batke, and through the Historical Society of Hinckley, who has been advocate of Cleveland Metro Parks and of my personal career as a historical interpreter, actually, before I became a naturalist several years ago. So I just want to acknowledge you. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, you know, a picture is worth 1,000 words. You've heard that. That's an old cliche, but it is true. But I'm not going to tell you, well, I'm not going to say 1,000 words tonight. But I tell you, when you look at this picture, it tells you a lot. And one of the things that I want to tell you about, and before I get into the gentleman by the name of John F. Johnson, John Johnson's picnic area, because this is kind of a focal point of the lake. It really is. But I'm probably going to be preaching to the choir a little bit, or not preaching, but speaking to the choir. And that is, all of us know that this was the area of the Western Reserve, correct? Of the Connecticut Land Company that they gave, and lots of people, thousands of hundreds of people came here. And we know here in Hinckley is Samuel Hinckley, who came, Judge Samuel Hinckley came in 1795 to come to this area. And when he came, he set aside, at least the story is, as some of you know, is he bought this whole township for $700. Well, and then they say it was for a wagon and 2 horses or harnesses, but not sure if that's totally true. But he did buy this, and then if you average out the 5 mile square of land that Samuel Hinckley owned, it ended up being he spent 23 cents an acre. Pretty good deal, huh? Yeah. But I tell you, but as you go, how many have ever really walked Hinckley Reservation a lot? And you know some of the names there that in our reservation, some of you are familiar with Whip's Ledges. You're familiar, right, with Johnson's Picnic Area, some of those. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. But before we do, how many have ever been to the Hinckley Buzzard Sunday? And of course, everybody does. Yeah. How many are actually from Hinckley? Okay, most of you are. Okay. So I'm not going to be telling you anything new, but I'll try to show you some things and hopefully enlighten you a little bit. So we know that this whole township was really not very tillable, right? Would you agree, Eric? I would agree. You would agree. He's a natural resource man, tries to plow some of these areas. Right? But I tell you, so we know it wasn't tillable. So this was one of the last townships to really be settled in for the most part. And so what happened was, it was an island. So the story is, I'm going to tell you in 2 seconds, is that the wild animals in this 5 mile square came out, began to eat the farmers' livestock. So a big hunt came. So the story is that that's why the buzzards come, right? And you say, right, Foster. But we know that they've been coming back for many, many centuries, and more than that probably. But so this is something that has been celebrated since the 1950s in Cleveland Metro Parks and Hinckley Reservation. But then came Robert Whip in 1848, 1849. He from England. He came over and he began to buy up land. He was a butcher, and he came over and he began to buy up land little by little. And the story is that he became known as a cattle baron, and he owned over 2,000 acres by the time that was all said and done. And then of course everybody knows the story about almost the murder of Robert Whip. And if you want to talk to me a little later about that, I'll tell you all the juicy details, all right? But these are some of the stories that we have. But let's get to what we're talking about today, Hinckley Lake, all right? Hinckley Lake was built on the land that at that time, it used to be Robert Whip's land. Then it became what we know as John F. Johnson. There were lots of farmers around there who owned lots of land, eventually gave their land to Cleveland Metro Park, so we bought their land. A lot of farmers, but John F. Johnson was a man, they say that by the time it was all said and done, and the time that he began to sell it off in the early 1920s, he had about 2,000 acres in that general area and in the Cleveland area as well. So there is some stories, and I've read some things I haven't confirmed at 100%, but I just want to let you share like why, how does John Johnson and our first executive director, William Stinchcomb, how does that happen? And I'm sure the park planners know a little bit more than maybe I do, but I tell you what, William Stinchcomb was, and I say this in the best term, nowadays we can't say it, but he was a good politician because he was a great networker. He knew people throughout the whole area, and Mr. Johnson was a businessman in Cleveland off of Denison Avenue. He became the president of Stadler Products Company. What they did is they were a rendering company, taking when there was butchering or in Cleveland, slaughterhouses, they would take what left over and they would make tallow, they'd make fertilizer, they'd make candles, they would make soap. And he became a millionaire in Cleveland. And like a lot of millionaires, they would buy lots of land, and Cleveland Metro Parks was part of that, where a lot of those millionaires owned land. And they would, a lot of times they would bequeath their land, they would give Cleveland Metro Parks the land. Well, John Johnson was one of those. And he owned that area. Well, the story is there was another man by the name of, so this name will come in, you might hear it, George Emmett. Anybody hear of that name? Yeah, George Emmett was a man, he was a Hinkleyite, all right? And he was a big promoter of the parks. And so he obviously knew William Stinchcomb. He knew John Johnson. And he began to push for a park system in the Hinckley to get Cleveland Metro Parks or Cleveland Metropolitan Park District to take on this park. So and I can't go into the details, but what happened was, he promoted this in 1923. But by the time of 1924 came along, he got the confidence of a lot of people here in Hinckley, Ohio, and to buy into setting aside all this land. And he was going to give, eventually he gave 237 acres to Cleveland Metropolitan District at that time. And this was by the time it was all said and done, it was 1925. And so when he did that, he had a dream, and we're going to go here. His dream was to, okay, I'm going to have you help me.
It's sensitive for us.
Mhm. And his dream was to build make a dam across the eastern branch of the Rocky River, and he did. He made a small dam, and he made what we call Echo Lake. Now, Cleveland Metro Parks, Hinckley Lake originally was called Echo Lake at one time, but we wouldn't know that because it was so so long ago. But so when he gave this land to Cleveland Metro Parks, what happened was the agreement was that we would come and build a dam across it, but he could keep his property on the northeast side of it. And so that farm that you saw, that big barn, was his farm. And so he built the dam, and it took a while. It took a while, like with a lot of getting donated. You just can't just give land to a big parks department. It takes a lot of litigation. It takes a lot of homework. And so by the time it was all said, it was about a year later that they started building. It was in the fall of 1925 when they started building this dam. But it wasn't until the summer of July of 1927 when they finally finished it. it was a lot of time, a lot of thing, and just like a lot of contractors, they probably didn't know quite, oh boy, this is a little bit bigger a project than we thought it was. But thank goodness they did get it done. All right, oh, there we go. Thank you so much. And so you can see now the story isn't in the, when I looked at the newspaper articles and things, it said there was an earthen dam that was going to be 900 feet long. And we can see part of that today. And it was going to be about 20 feet high above the water level. And so you're going to hear some more of what it's going to become in the future here. But it was quite an investment, and they said it was going to cost about, well, they estimated about $100,000. And you're going to see what it's going to cost today, right? But I tell you what, it was a major thing, and there was a lot of concern about it. It's like, why do we need something like this? Why do we do this? But I tell you what, you're going to find out through the next 96 years how many people have enjoyed this. Thousands and thousands, we could say millions probably by the time in the 96 years that the Hinckley Lake has been here. And so the benefit has been phenomenal to what we do. So by the time about July 1927 hit, you can see the earthen dam, you can see the spillway there. Isn't that amazing? And John Johnson agreed, or they agreed that they would allow him to keep his property on this end, and he owned some other ends. Eventually, he sold things off, more land. And this house, I believe, is still there.
There's a house.
Huh?
There is one house.
Yeah, one house left. And but it is amazing. And this was actually probably right when they shut the spillway or the valve, and it was starting to fill up, because you can see how the land was still exposed to some of it.
It's probably the same valve, like Ken.
Is it the same valve? Okay, yeah, it's amazing. So this is, of course, I'm not sure what year this was, but you can see it's beautiful. So one of the first things that they did then, after they created this dam, John Johnson was still living at their end, they began to open it up to the public, because what happened is Mr. Johnson wanted to have a cottage village. He wanted to have a village of cottages around. William Stinchcliffe says, well, wait a minute, we don't want it to be exclusive. We want it to be open to the public. And so that's what it became. So they began to make a boulevard east, or we know it as West Drive and East Drive, driving around, and then they shortly made a trail around the lake so people could enjoy it. And so we've been enjoying that, and people have been enjoying it for decades. And so it's still a treasure, obviously, but you can see what it's going on now. Of course, how many have ever swam in the spillway as a kid? Look at it. Look at that. My goodness. You did too, Sean? Really? Awesome. So I tell you, I met several years ago when we had our centennial. I was doing an oral history project, and I interviewed lots of people who said that, talked about Hinckley Reservation, talked about the spillway, and they talked about how important it was to their families in the picnic areas and things. And this spillway was a big part of their family memories. Of course, as the years went by, this was Huntington Beach was a big part of it, but this was one of the biggest, and Wallace Lake, but this was the biggest lake, and I think in the area, for sure, inland lake. And so sure enough, it drew hundreds and hundreds of people through those first few years. And and this is 1939, but you can see, and I don't see the barn there, but I was told that eventually the barn that we saw in the beginning was torn down in 1976. The Parks Department used that barn for many, many years for many things, but yeah, some of you are into cars, you can date those. Yeah. But here's something that you can see. This is a good example again of the barn and what it was like shortly after it was built. but it's kind of a neat thing. And what I like about it is too, is look at the open land. You know, if you drive through there now, you know, historic, I mean, it's deep woods, isn't it? And you have a lot of houses along here, but it's how the reforestation, and that's part of Cleveland Metro Park's vision too. They went back and reforested it. They began to reclaim some of that farmland and make it into a park that we know today. But part of outdoor experiences, outdoor education, outdoor experiences, we have been using this for, well, there was a boathouse since I was told by Mr. Batley since the 1940s. There was a boathouse there. 47, thank you, sir. And so, and we've had a boathouse ever since. And Melissa, who you heard from her, she's the manager right there now. But lots of programs, lots of good things going on. Lots of education from teaching in urban kids coming out to camps, to Hinckley children coming out every year, to other local people, and teaching them outdoor skills, teaching them kayak, and teaching them stand-up paddleboarding. Of course, we've got special things as stand-up yoga or sound. How many have ever done that? Okay. Oh, you have. Good.
Not here.
Oh, no, you're not the one that fell in last. No, I didn't. Okay. But so a lot of different diversity, but there's the boathouse there. It's relatively recent, but you know, I remember when we used to do canoes around. Now we do stand-up, we do kayaking, we do all kinds of wonderful things up there. And so it's always busy, always something to be done there. And so we hope you take advantage of that all through these years. And since 1993, we've had some historic programs. The Voyager Canoe Program. Have you ever seen the big canoe going by through Hinckley? You've been on it. Yay, all right. So we try to recapture some of the history, the Great Lakes history, but also local history as well. And then all kinds of events, special events, fishing derbies, fishing opportunities for those folks. And then we have another program we call the Water Lab that we do for kids. So lots of cool things that is going on today, and it's going on for the last 95 years. So thank you so much. I'm sure Sean's going, are you about done now?
That's the fun part.
Yeah. But I tell you, thank you so much. And if you have any more questions after the end of the program, I'm more than happy to try to answer them for you. All right.
So now we'd like to get into some of the technical aspects, natural resource aspects, and a little bit more of the engineering and the planning that's gone into this. So every few years, we end up bringing our sonar out to Hinckley Lake to determine how deep it is. I know we actually got a question about some of the siltation that has occurred, especially closer to State Road. One of the things that happens when you impound a river, such as the East Branch of the Rocky River, is you are interrupting that sediment transport. So rivers carry sediment out to their destinations. When you put a dam in, you are then, in some instances, trapping some of that sediment. So we always want to make sure we understand about how deep the lake is. And you can see here in this southern and eastern portion, it's gotten rather shallow. So we'll talk about that in a second in terms of what we're going to be doing. We've known for some time that a major investment is needed in the dam. As you heard from Foster, in 2027, which is only 4 short years from now, that dam will turn 100. It is rare that you see a piece of infrastructure last for 100 years. And Hinckley Dam is still in really good shape. The issues are a lot has changed in 100 years in terms of engineering and code, and we now need to bring it up to modern standards. So we've been recognizing in our reservation master planning process the need to update the dam, and we've been working on this for some time. So here's the blow up of our reservation master plan that literally is talking about the considerations around the dam rehabilitation itself. So this has been a long time coming. With that, this dam is one of many in the state of Ohio, but one where we do monthly inspections. So we are beholden to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Dam Safety Program. And I'll talk a little bit about how they classify dams. But we take these things very seriously. So every month, Ken and his team, up until the time we started construction, are doing inspections. We need to get eyes on the dam to make sure that we aren't seeing issues with it, deterioration. There's an issue called piping, when water will try and seek its level through the dam itself. And if we were to see wet spots on the downside of that earthen embankment, that is a very bad sign. We don't see that, but it's something that we have to check for when we do our inspections. The other thing we have for Hinckley Dam is an emergency action plan. God forbid we ever have a catastrophe, but if we did, we have a plan at least to react to it. That being said, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources requires us to have an emergency action plan. I want to say we're probably one of the best dam owners in the States, because we actually keep our emergency action plans up to date. When they do our inspections, we always get a pretty good attaboy for the fact that we keep these things current. One of the processes that we have to go through in the emergency action plan is, I know this map is hard to read, but it shows how wide of a path would be inundated if the dam broke. And quite frankly, if this dam were to fail, there would be flooding basically all the way into North Wellington, Strongsville, along the river corridor. So because of this dam and the fact that it is potentially a hazard, we're also in partnership with Medina County, and the dam is part of the all hazard and flood mitigation plan of the county, so that through FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, if there ever was an issue, not only do we have an emergency action plan, but we're part of the county's larger plan, so that there's a team of people ready to jump into action if there was an issue. I've been here a decade. Others have been here much longer than me. We have not had issues, nothing anywhere close to having to enact any of these emergency action plans. That being said, every 5 years, we actually have the ODNR Dam Safety Division come out and inspect the dam for us. So they tell us what we're doing right and wrong. So they've been doing this for decades, and we've been working with them to have them review the plans for us to rehabilitate the dam. So we also have to pay them, which is kind of like a shot in the arm. So I don't know how fair that is, but one of the reasons they take such interest in this dam is the fact that they've got a database of all the dams in Ohio, and the Hinckley Dam here is what you call a Class 1 dam. So there are different classifications of dams. Class 1 is what's called a high hazard dam. If Hinckley Dam were to break, that means that there would be impact to life or property. So that puts a higher onus on us to manage the dam and to inspect the dam. That being said, okay, Hinckley Dam is one of 4,500 dams in Ohio. Okay, a lot of dams in Ohio. It is one of 1,500 Class 1 dams. Okay, of those 1,500 Class 1 dams, some are owned by parks, some are owned by utilities. ODNR owns 179 dams, and 56 of them are that Class 1 high hazard dam. We live in an era where we built a lot of infrastructure decades and decades ago. So we need to be investing in this infrastructure, but I'll tell you, like, even with the condition that Hinckley Dam is in, it's still in very good condition compared to other dams in Ohio. There are many issues and deficiencies in other dams throughout the state. If you follow the media a lot, Buckeye Lake Dam and Grand Lake St. Mary's Dam have gotten a lot of press because they were in pretty rough shape before they received millions upon millions of investment to rehabilitate those dams. We are not spending anywhere near the 60 million, 80 million. We're spending $10 million to rehabilitate the dam, and we are basically rebuilding it. So we've been very smart about how we've approached rebuilding this dam. Some of the engineering here. In 2017, we did a study to develop and understand what it was going to take to rehabilitate the dam. And there's one major aspect of the dam that we need to address, and that's what's called the probable maximum flood. Okay? I know we're not all engineers and we don't all love graphs, but I'll kind of walk you through this. So let's say we have a rainstorm that starts here and it lasts for days perhaps and ends here. I know we hear a lot about, oh, that was a 10-year flood or a 100-year flood or a 500-year flood. So we model that. A 100-year flood can be handled by the lake, right? But what happens if we have the leg of a hurricane or some remnant of a storm just come sit over Northeast Ohio? Think about Superstorm Sandy, think about how we've seen these hurricanes right up the coast and sometimes break inland. So we need to plan for what's called the PMF, probable maximum flood. And if you look at just the difference in what that volume of water is and flow of water, it's immense. So basically, we are planning for an instance that we hope never happens, but we have to plan for it because that is what our modern code requires us to do. So that's why we're doing a lot of what we're doing here at the dam. So if you cut like a pancake, if you cut a cross section through the dam, today the lake sits on that earthen portion of the dam about here. When you get that 100-year flood, it sits here. So the dam still contains the 100-year flood. Here's the issue. When you get that probable maximum flood, it inundates the dam, and what happens on the backside of an earthen embankment is erosion, and it could take 20 minutes. That's all it is. And you could have an issue. So what we're doing to fix that, we've hired our engineering firm, Michael Baker. They are one of the best engineering firms in the country when it comes to dam engineering and permitting. And they have walked us through this entire process. So what we'll be doing is we're going to be raising that berm. So we're going to raise it by about 4 feet. Here's the normal water level that you see in the lake. Here's that 100-year flood that can easily be contained. And now the difference is that probable maximum flood is contained within the lake. So we don't have to worry about the failure. But there's another component of this. So now that we've stored all this water in the lake, and by the way, here's from a kayak, I kind of wanted to show you just what the difference of about 4 feet would be. It's pretty nominal in terms of aesthetic impact. Once it's done, you're probably not going to notice much of a difference, especially from water. But so we'll be raising the embankment on the right side and the west side of the dam by about 4 feet, and then replacing the spillway, 150-foot long spillway. But what we had to do, because now that we've raised the embankment and we're pushing all of that water over the spillway, that then puts a lot of force on that spillway. So here's the spillway as it looks today. And when you put all of the force of the water over the spillway, it has the potential to rotate. And if it rotates, it can fail. So what we've done then is we've come in and we're actually going to keep the old spillway as a form, pour about 3 feet of concrete behind it. Okay, we'll attach the two, and then we'll basically have a very heavy anchor that will sit there and resist any of those forces from that probable maximum flood. So that was a lot. Okay, so that's kind of the technical and construction side of this. Here's the thing. We've got dredging that we need to do in the south portion of the lake. We have a whole bunch of clay that we need to raise that embankment by about 4 feet. So what do? Because we don't want to be transporting clay over the road network, you know, from miles and miles away. So we actually did some geological investigations around the park. And what we found was in the corner of Buzzard's Roost, far off the road, we've got a very thick layer of clay that is perfect for raising the embankment and being impermeable to water. So what we'll be doing, and one of the things you'll start seeing next spring is in the back of Buzzard's Roost, we will be digging a pit and we'll be harvesting clay. And that clay will then be brought from Buzzard's Roost to the dam itself. And then when we dredge the back portion of the lake and remove a lot of that silt, we'll then fill the hole. We're going to have a lot more dredging than we will have mined clay. So we're going to more than fill the hole, and we'll create some nice mounds in the very back of Buzzard's Roost. So before we started any of the construction, we really still haven't started in earnest. We needed to drain the lake. I understand that the title of this program is The Draining of Hinckley Lake, so that has a lot of interest. With that, and before that process of draining the lake, we did a lot of due diligence and studying. Eric's going to walk us through some of the ecological side of the project. Thank you. That one over there.
Hey, everybody. So one of the first things we did were start thinking about how this can impact all our wildlife species. And there's a whole variety of things that obviously just like a lot of you have seen a lot of these critters out there, be it birds, fish, you name it. Freshwater mussels is probably one you didn't get to see a lot of, but there actually was quite a few of those guys in this lake. That's one of the first things we did. And this statewide is important because these guys are diminishing really quickly. So I thought it was very important that we definitely address it and see how many of them in there. And after some investigation, there were actually quite a few freshwater mussels in there. So back in July, we actually had a consultant come in, and I don't know if any of you noticed the boat out there and a bunch of scuba divers kind of cruising through the lake. That was them getting these freshwater mussels out of the lake and relocating them in preparation for the drawdown. They were in there for almost a week doing this, doing 12-hour days. So this isn't fun work. They couldn't see underwater, so it was all tactile. They had to feel for these things and then pull them out. And we ended up pulling out 1,452. That's what that crew found, and we found 6 species. So this isn't just all one species. You know, this was 6 species. One, you know, nothing rare, but one was a little bit of a surprise and really awesome that it was in there. So all those were removed, relocated a little bit further up in an appropriate habitat that they would like, that won't be affected by the drawdown and won't be affected by the dredging. Once we started lowering the lake, we then found more that had gotten missed from that initial push. And then Metro Park staff came in and we removed those, which was challenging because that muck is pretty deep, pretty deep stuff. So we got creative. That's the end of a pole saw that we actually, I took that off the wall of my barn, which is a mineral holder for horses. It's the perfect size to fit a clam inside of. And then we take it to the end of the pole. It gave me an additional 20 feet of reach. And we were able to remove another 187 from just around the boathouse. Wow. The vast majority of these were all around the boathouse, which was also interesting. So we also relocated those guys, and that's, you can see us kind of sorting through them here, getting prepped to move them. Here are the buckets, and yeah, it was a little bit of an adventure out there. Pretty cool stuff. So another question that we get are, by the biggest one, are the beaver. So there are definitely a lot of beaver activity has been in this lake for over a decade now. And it has always varied, and they have definitely set up shop on this east end. What we're looking at right here is just a little bit past where the lake ends. That used to be lake at one time. And now you can see how the river has created different grades through all of that. That is all material that has been deposited by the river and is now growing trees. So the beaver love this habitat. There's a ton of species of tree out there that they love, both just eat and for construction of lodges and dams and everything else. So, you know, what you can see, that right there, this is on the north side of the lake. Well, you might be familiar with this. Right down here is a bench and there's a beaver dam right down here. This is their channel. They built that. They move all that material out and that allows them access even, back and forth. When we first initially drained the lake, all this dried out and there was just the river channel with a little bit of water flowing. It took maybe a week or two after we started draining it and they responded. And they have since built 3 dams out there. Yeah, they're very active and they like to work. They really like to work a lot. And this is a family effort. This isn't just like 2 individuals. This is extended family. Come in and let's do this. And they built 2 dams in 2 nights. One on the south side, because I had walked it, no dam that day, dam the next day. It was amazing. I've never seen them build that fast before. So they built one on the north, they built one on the south, and now I think, and I'm almost positive there's one in the middle somewhere that I can't see. And if you ever drive across State Road, you notice that water level has risen a little bit. That's that 3rd dam we actually can't see. So those guys are super adaptive, and this is, us draining the lake, they're just like, they're so used to being adaptive in nature. And nature does not like static. Nature doesn't like things to be uniform all the time. And these critters are capable of adapting and adapting very fast. That is true of our turtles. That's been another big concern, are our turtles. Boy, we got to save turtles. They're out there walking around. I just was watching big snapper today, lumbering, just cruising across the lake bed, and he was heading towards this. He was moving up towards the end. It was interesting watching the behavior as the lake drew down. It took us weeks, and you saw turtles following the pool as it continued to drain. The pool disappeared, and now we have the river kind of braiding through what was the old lake bed, and they have now marched back up the other end, and they're hopping into the areas that the beavers have been founded. So far, lots of snappers. Saw a couple painted turtles. I did find 1 musk turtle, which is pretty cool. Musk turtle are super common. They definitely are out there. And that is one that I helped him a little bit. He actually came up on the lake trail and he was just hanging out up there. And so I helped him move over a little bit farther down the river and hop into this. So pretty neat stuff. The other big concern has been the fish. So as the lake drained, I think a lot of our sunfish, so those are your bass, those are your bluegill, those are the guys that most people are going out there to fish for. Those guys have no problem shooting through the pipe, and a lot of them did, probably, especially as we got low, go through the pipe. The fish that did not want to leave that place were the carp. The carp held on, and if any of you were there when the lake finally pulled down that day, there were a lot of carp out there, and all of them were trying to go up. Well, none of them wanted to go down. So they did not want to evacuate that place, and that's their nature. And carp are one of those species that we're not happy to have in the lake. They do a lot of harm in there, and it hasn't been a great fishery primarily because of our carp problem. So there's been a lot of critters that have been working on those carp. I don't know if any of you have been out there, but the eagles have noticed. And they've been cruising around. I've for sure at least 5 different eagles. I've seen juvies, different ages of juvenile eagles, and then there's been at least 2 adults crawling around out there. And this is like primo. Primo is we're heading into winter for those guys, because what they're trying to do right now is put on weight and put on meat for winter. And this is like a boom for them. So, and then great blue herons, and we had a lot of cormorants. We were down there a lot watching all this happen. It's been interesting, once again, watching how things respond. And as we started to expose that mudflat, the shorebirds started to appear, and we're on the tail end of peak migration for shorebirds. They're starting to head south, and they definitely were taking advantage. We had hundreds of killdeer, which is a shorebird, pretty common, but they were loving it out there. We had solitary sandpipers. We had pectoral sandpipers show up kind of near the end, which is a really good one. Once again, not super common. We had snipe out there, which is like a woodcock looking kind of little bird. It's really big, long gill, and it's kind of a goofy looking bird, but really cool to see them out there using that mud flat. So yeah, some critters had to change and move, and then some critters were definitely able to capitalize on the fact that we drew this lake down. So here's a photo of what our guys have done. That's one of the brand new ones. And then that first, so when we drew this lake down, it just happened to coincide with the fact that we stopped getting rain. Like we dried out at the exact same time. So it made the drawdown of this lake really quite nice. It came down. It could have been much more difficult if we kept getting pushes of rain and the lake would have charged up and we had to pull it back down. So it worked out really well. One push of water after the new dams breached both their dams. And within a couple days, they fixed it. And this is that system they have to how do you have a dam that can hold up to a river? And that's how it works. The dam gets breached by a flood. It pushes that material just a little bit down the river. They come in and then they pile on. They don't borrow from the stuff that got moved. They put all new stuff in there. And all of a sudden their dam just keeps increasing in size because you have the stuff that got built. And then they eventually have a dam that will hold up to the river. So really. They're one of my favorite critters. They're honestly one of my favorite critters because they are tenacious. They cause me a lot of headaches sometimes because they love to, if they hear water and it's near somewhere where they want there to be water, they will make sure that it stops moving. So if there's a pipe, if there is anything that's in the way, they plug it. And they're really good at plugging stuff. So I've worked really hard. There's these little things called beaver deceivers, which are basically pipes that go underwater so that it moves that water without them knowing how it's moving. They can't hear it. They can't see a point where it's moving. And that's worked quite effectively on a lot of different spots. Here, most places, if I can let them do what they can do, because they can build wetlands better than we could ever dream of building wetlands. They are incredible. If you've ever been over at North Chagrin, there's a marsh over there we call Dinger's Marsh. That's all built by beaver. It is phenomenal. It flooded one of our bridle trails. Cut that bridle trail down, we stopped using it, and now it's just this awesome marsh. So I love having these guys on the landscape. As much trouble as they can be, they're really good to have. So, yeah, at the end of this, anybody else has any wildlife stuff or any NR related stuff, I am up for chatting.
Thanks, Eric. So we've got several aerial drones and we have been taking sequential pictures of the process of the lake drawdown. So all the photography you see here was done by the Metro Park staff. But here is September 18th. We started the drawdown the morning of the 18th. You can see here we've opened the valve and the water's flowing into the river. And then 11 days later, you can start to see the rim of the shoreline start to take shape. And then here's October 5th. You can start to see some of those mud flats become exposed, especially in the southern area. So we're going to jump to the southern area now. This was the 19th in that southern area where we've seen a lot of silt deposits. And this was the 5th. So this is where we're going to be doing our work in terms of taking a lot of the silt out of the lake. But we have to let it dry. We have to let it dry for a while. Yes, sir.
Where are you taking the silt?
We are going to take the silt to Buzzard's Roost, and we're going to fill the hole that we create when we actually harvest the clay from the ground and use the clay in the dam embankment. So all the silt will stay within the park, and it will be taken to Buzzard's Roost in the very back corner.
Is that hole big enough to take all that?
The hole will no way be big enough.
Right.
So we're probably going to be creating some mounds and some rolling hills in the back of the meadow, and then we will replant it with meadow grasses when we're done.
Because in the mid-60s, they dredged,
Yes.
and if I remember right, it was pumped it to the south.
I do believe, so that's called mechanical dredging, and I do believe they did that. And,
It took a couple of years.
yeah, we don't want to take that long, but yeah, we know that this is something that we got to keep on top of. So, yes.
what happened to all the fish in the lake? That's one of the most common questions you'll see on Facebook from the residents.
So, Eric kind of went through a lot of the fish migration that happened. A lot found their own way. And those that didn't, you heard was mostly the invasive catfish species, carp species. And, quite frankly, we're pretty happy with the whole process and how it works, and minimizing the ecological impact. So here's a few more pictures. This is where Johnson's Creek comes out. This is on the 19th of September, and then here you go on the 5th. So everything is exposed in terms of the mud flats. Okay, we've talked a lot about facts, engineering, history, ecology, but there's another aspect of this project that is crucially important, and that is we have closed the lake. And when I say the lake, I mean the boundary of the lake and everything within the lake. If you've ever gotten your foot stuck in mud, multiply that many times over. This is not somewhere that you want to be walking. We've had our surveyors at times get caught in these situations. And if you see anybody even contemplating walking into, we get it. It's a unique look right now that the lake is drained. Do not walk out there. It's just that plain and simple. I don't want to go into what could happen, but do not walk out.
Are you going to have people patrolling? Because I walk 5 days a week and there are people down there all the time. So we need more patrol.
We will have people patrolling. Actually getting a lot of questions. And we're also going to increase the amount of signs that we have up. And then Seth's going to walk through a little bit here about how we're going to be fencing off a portion, especially when we're seeing a lot of folks. So Seth's going to walk us a little bit through the construction schedule, and then we got the map up, right?
Yeah, it should be on the next slide. So as you guys have seen, like strange, construction is gearing up right now. We're doing a lot of the preliminary work. So one of the next steps is kind of controlling the water. So now that everything's drained, if we get a large event, it's going to generate a lot of water to the work area. What we need to do is make sure our workers are safe. So they're going to be setting up all sorts of controls to make sure that they're safe during the work. And that's going to be going on in the next coming weeks. They'll be establishing their erosion control practices as well. From there, once they have the control of water set up and they feel that the site is secure enough to actually get boots on the ground, they'll start the demolition work of the dam itself. A lot of the concrete work will be taking place this year. Following the concrete work, we'll be moving into the earthen embankments that Sean spoke of on the side of the spillway itself. So a lot of the spillway work will take place in the near future. And as Sean elaborated, the dredging work will follow after that.
So we really want to give time for the lake to dry. We've got a lot of experience with drawing down the ponds and the lakes in the Metro Park system. And the more time we can give, especially with a lake this size, we need to allow that decanting process to take place. So you're going to see construction later this fall, over the winter, next spring, next summer, and then likely to see a little bit of a lull in activities, and then we'll come back in 2024, and that's when you'll see the dredging take place in that southern end of the lake. And then in 2025, that's when dredging takes place. And then our goal was always to have the lake back filled in time for the 100-year anniversary. We're probably going to beat that by a year. So by the 2026 swim season is when we anticipate having the lake refilled. The actual refilling process of the lake is, it depends if we get a storm or not. It could literally fill within a matter of days. But if we don't get a storm, it'll probably take 45 plus or minus days to fill. And we had a really good question come in that asked, when we fill the lake, are we going to just close the valve? The answer is no, because we still need to allow for at least some base flow to continue down the east branch of the Rocky River. So we will choke the valve and allow flow to continue, but not completely close the valve. During construction though, you want to walk through.
Yeah.
the trail closures?
So like we said, up here is the spillway area. This whole red dots that we kind of got shown on there, that's gonna be the fenced off area where a lot of the work at the spillway, the earth embankment will take place. It'll be closed off, it won't have access to the public. It'll be a chain link fence, so if you are walking around, you know, you'll notice the ugly fence hanging around there. Just know it's for your own safety, make sure you guys don't wander in there. There'll also be a lot of construction vehicles entering and exiting during the project as well, so they'll all be working from that area. So with that being said, a portion of the lake trail will unfortunately be closed. And that's simply because we'll have the fence up. We don't want people wandering close up to it. Once the dredging work takes place on this end of the lake, a portion of this lake trail will unfortunately have to be closed as well, because we'll be using that as the haul road to go down to Buzzard's Roost.
To add on what Seth's saying, at no time do we plan to have to close the all-purpose trail, the paved all-purpose trail. So what we're looking to close for your safety is the earthen trail next to the lake up here on the northwest side. So that's coming up later this fall. And then when we dredge, so 2025, the portion of the lake trail down by State Road. So those are both seasonal.
Sorry, to clarify,
Oh,
they will be able to catch the all-purpose trail and back.
Yep.
on the- Okay.
There's the access point that you will be used, the lake trail, to jump back on the paved trail. So you'll still have the complete circle around the entire lake where users can use.
we have a website. On that website, we will be continuously updating facts and updates about the project. So it's clevelandmetroparks.com, and if any of you are tech savvy, you can get out your cell phones and scan our QR code. I can put this back up there in a bit. But on the website, we do have frequently asked questions, because like we received from you already, and I'm sure we'll get some more, especially on the fish. We get a lot of common questions about the project that we want to make sure that we answer. So on the website, frequently asked questions. And if the question that you have isn't answered, just call us and we're happy to talk. Okay, guys, so with that, that was a lot, yes. So we're gonna open it up to questions, and then hopefully address anything you have. Yes, sir.
There's how much between East Drive and State Road, you've got some little project going on to the north on the south side of Bellis Road.
South side.
It's like a left there, right?
Halfway between State and
So we are working on orphaned wells.
Working on what?
Orphaned wells. These are old oil/gas wells that are back from the turn of the century. Almost as old, if not as old as this lake. So these are basically pipes out in the middle of the woods that nobody knows who drilled that, and they've been there. So we are working with the state and we are capping those. We are capping them, and then those will be secured and will be good. There's 6 of them in Hinckley. So that's what you're seeing on Bellis Road right there.
Okay.
Good question. In the back, yes, sir.
I got a question about the beavers. So they're gonna be left upstream of the project, or kind of left alone?
Yep.
Good.
Yep. So, yeah, there's right about where all the vegetation starts. So, yeah, so the beaver, like all their stuff is set up here. This is that one photo where I showed you they had that like line dug out.
That's not gonna get.
No.
This portion right here, sorry, I should explain a little clearer. This dotted in portion, that's gonna be the limits of the dredging.
How much you taking out of it?
We're not quite sure yet, but probably 25,000 cubic yards.
In height.
Our goal is to take 2 or 3 feet out. So it's a lot of silt.
The rest of the lake is gonna stay the same as it is right now.
We're gonna be doing some earthwork up by the spillway. But the depths of the remainder of the lake are still healthy enough In another 50 years or so, we may come back, we will have to come back and do more work. But right now the focus is on the south side where we've seen, we're having kayakers launch from the boathouse and get stuck within a few feet of their launch. So it's not a good scenario. So we're really going to concentrate our dredging here. And again, the big emphasis for this project is rehabilitating this dam and getting another 100 years out of it. Yes.
Okay, on spillway itself, you're gonna add 3 feet of concrete, that is to the north side?
To the north side, correct.
Well, how do they get rid of the water on that side? If the concrete.
Can you help us? Buckets. So Seth was talking about the contractor developing their control of water plan. Working in an active river like we are is complicated, it's risky. When we get it's going to happen. When we get a storm, we're likely to have a challenge, I'll put it that way. And we plan for it. So what we will be doing is extending the outlet pipe today that drains through the dam so that we can do all that construction in as much in the dry as possible. Great question. In the back.
I think a couple of years ago, I go around the lake all the time. So I noticed that the gate valve was open and some water was being let out. And in that same time period, I think there was something doing some core samples on top of the dam. My question is that valve original that got open? And then how did it not get plugged?
Okay, great question. So can we believe the valve is original? I mean, we might have reconditioned the valve several times over in the history of the dam, but it is definitely old. I'll tell you that. We exercise that valve once a year in the fall, right?
Every year, yeah, we go down, there's a confined entry that way actually go down and like essentially the bottom of the dam inside, and we actually grease all of the moving parts, and then we basically open it to make sure everything operates as it needs to, and then we close it back up. So every year in usually October and November, right around this time of year, we can do that. I just see the big wheel up there and water coming out of it. I thought it had something to do with the planning of this big project.
Oh, it is, yeah. And the question of how does it not get plugged? Every year when we do exercise it and open it up, that first flush it ain't pretty.
Smells pretty bad too.
Yes, sir.
So when they work on the dam, will they also raise the top of the dam?
Great question. So the dam is 900 feet long, give or take. So the earthen portions of it, so on the west side of the spillway and the longer portion on the east side of the spillway, that'll get raised about 4 feet with clay. They'll strip the topsoil and then they'll put clay on it and then put back topsoil and replace it. The actual spillway, we're going to build it back to its elevation today. So we are not raising the normal level of the lake. We're going to rebuild it where it is. So that lake level stays the same. That's why it's important that we dredge, because we're not raising the lake.
So the 3 feet of concrete just makes the dam wider.
Correct.
The whole one.
Exactly. Yeah, it literally is acting as a weight, as an anchor, so it won't rotate in this flux. Yes.
So that means that we're using it downstream like marking forward the level of reservoir in anticipation of spring on.
Well, so the lake will be drained. And
All of this is after the reservoir fills,
yes,
and you get a spring runoff, all goes over the store.
it does. So basically, we're going to be operating the lake when we're done with this project. We're going to be operating it like we've operated it for the past 96 years. And we only one time in my history here have we ever lowered the lake before a storm, and that was one of those hurricane remnants that we were afraid was going to come park over Northeast Ohio. Other than that, the spring runoff basically gets routed through the lake just like any other storm. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, well, it's eroding part
part of the river road. There's an actual dam form. And the last time we had a flood, the state had come out, put guardrails because the road was broken. So,
Yeah, I don't know that the dam can fix that problem. We are a riparian park district, meaning that was set up on the Rocky River, Chagrin River, Tinkers Creek, Keeper Creek, Cuyahoga. Rivers move. It's what they do in nature, unless you armor them. So I don't know that the dam or controlling the water would really help that specific issue all that much. Yes.
We talked about how you got fish out, or how fish have themselves out. Will fish be able to get back in?
So we actually co-manage the lake. You want to?
Yes, so this isn't exclusively managed by us. This is a dual effort with Division of Wildlife, the fisheries program. So when we're making decisions about fish, they're definitely at the table and they definitely have thoughts. You know, it was their suggestion that let's not try and do anything with the fish. They're gonna move through it. And a lot of them did, except the carp. When this thing gets all charged back up, there are a lot of fish up the river that are gonna come directly into that sucker. Some of them are gonna be carp, which is a bummer, because I wish we could keep them out. This is not the only body of water that we have that we battle carp. But we're gonna get both carp back in. A lot of fish are gonna come back in on their own. And honestly, that's probably the best way to do it. Historically, we did used to stock this. We actually stocked it up till quite recently. We may end up stocking it, or we may just let it naturally go back in.
There was a question. Yes.
Yeah, this is from the chat. It says, has the soil from the bottom of the lake been tested for contamination?
So the question, has the soil from the bottom of the lake been tested for contamination? The answer is yes. So it is called a soil characterization. And we actually went through that process quite some time ago when we started to do all the investigation for the dam, because we needed to know if it would be safe to dredge the soil and then keep it on site, which basically that's what we're doing. So we, on the East Branch of the Rocky River, upstream is mostly agriculture, very little industry, it's residential. So we don't see some of the legacy pollution issues here like we would in the Cuyahoga, or perhaps some other reaches of some of the more urbanized streams. So it's a great question. Yes.
How come you don't raise the level of the lake by like 3 feet or so, and the building that's earthen dam, you just don't raise the spillway, because then you won't have to dredge 50 years from now. Get 3 more feet, you take care of it.
Yeah, I won't say that we didn't consider that. At the end of the day, there was actually be more impacts than we realized. For one, Melissa's boathouse would be flooded. And quite honestly, Johnson's Creek, we would actually end up creating backwater in Johnson's Creek that feeds in from the south side. And then we would probably have some erosion issues around the entire lake, because for 100 years, the shoreline has been pretty stabilized. In fact, when we drew down the lake and when we've temporarily drawn down the lake in the past, there's regulations that we have to follow in terms of how quickly we can draw it down because of that shoreline stabilization issue. So if we raised it, we likely would have had to do some more clearing. We would have flooded the boathouse, and Johnson's Creek would have been pretty negatively impacted in terms of the backwater, and Johnson's picnic area too. And yeah, the state road and state road bridge.
But the other option is that they just bulldoze the whole the lake. You know why you're doing it? Why even by
yeah, it's a catch-22, no doubt.
Do you anticipate any odor coming from this after everything's dried out?
Potentially, but likely not. You know, as Ken said, we did get some odor. It would be there already, especially this, you know, the warm September and sunny September that we had when that was all exposed. I was down here a lot. I didn't notice anything. I mean, we could, when we start excavating for the dredging on the lake itself, but we really don't expect much. Yeah, good question.
Are you gonna, like, some of the path is falling in, like there's eroding.
Mhm.
Are you going to shore that up while, this whole process is going on?
There's some things that we need to do in and around the lake during this project. And I don't know the specific, if you're talking about Indian Point, but there's some specific areas we know we want to address as part of this while the lake is drawn down. Let's do, how about two more if we got? Yes.
Does the valve get used again?
Oh, here's the great thing, right? We can give the valve to the Historical Society if you want. So the valve, we are going to decommission the valve, and we are going to be building, so as in the new spillway, we're going to have what's called a new control tower. And that control tower, Ken's going to love it because it's going to be a lot easier to maintain. We'll have space, we'll have a new valve, and we'll have what's called a stop log system that basically helps keep the lake elevation steady. Actual modern amenities and not 96 years old. Yes, sir.
Any cosmetic changes to the area that people swim in that area, beach-wise, whatever?
I'll say the quick answer is no, but a few things there. We are going to rebuild the Lowhead Dam that creates the actual swimming area. So we've got a small valve that goes in there, a little gate valve, but it's time, so we will rebuild that. When we're done, we'll bring in new sand and really dress it up so that it's exactly as we all remember it. We know that's a special place. We know it kind of hurts to be out of commission for a little bit. But again, major investment is being made in our future with the dam. And that's the other thing I wanted to mention. I know I've kind of espoused a little bit about the state of our infrastructure in the country, but every penny that's being spent on this project is Cleveland Metro Parks money. So we searched and applied for years and years for federal dollars, state dollars, other grants. And the slide that I showed you with the 4,500 dams in Ohio, you know, we do really good at funding highways and roads and other projects. We don't do great at funding dams. So we are paying for this with all of our own money, more tax dollars being invested right here. One more question. Yes, sir.
The dredging itself,
Mhm.
how is it gonna be done? Drag line or excavators out there? What?
You know, I didn't mention the contractor that we have. So Great Lakes Construction is going to be our contractor on this project. They are in Hinckley Township. They've been located here for about 20 years now or so. They know how to do this work. They're very adept. They're a heavy highway site civil contractors. They will be using excavators. So we need to build haul roads and set up that entire process. But excavators, bulldozers, and those suckers are heavy. So we got to make sure we let it dry because they will get stuck.
Somebody will get stuck.
Yes, yes, they will get stuck. Okay, guys, can all the Metro Parks people stand up again? Because again, I want to thank them for. Yeah, we know you were all busy. If we didn't answer your question, we'll stick around for a little bit. You can always call, you can go on the website. Appreciate your time. Thank you guys very much for coming up today.